Okay, everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so we did yesterday we did the presentation. I know from some of your names on here that a lot of you were watching that, and that's great. Thank you. And I hope some of you had a chance, if you couldn't be there in person, to watch it on the replay, which is on our website and on Facebook. So it was 2 hours long. It went for a long time, and that wasn't even with questions. So this is your chance to ask the questions. Um, Lisa, are we doing it with the email address?
We are. So for those who are on with us right now, we have a Q&A section. It's on our website, afahorizon.org, and go into contact us, and you can type in your name, email address, and your question. We do have some questions that we've received already, and my cell phone is available for today's session while we kind of work out some of the technological kinks in this and get it really a smooth running system. So if you guys want to text message me as well, you can do that. But the main way that we're going to promote on the website to get these questions for the Q&A will be by using the website, contact us, your name, your email address, and your question.
Is there a direct email address they can use rather than going to the website?
They can email them to Amy Baird at afahorizon.org, but I don't have like a question email set up.
Okay. Okay, I don't have a list of questions, so does Joelle or Lisa want to read a question?
Yeah, I will read our first one.
Okay.
What are we getting compared to similar regional carriers? Now, it's pretty broad, but that's the question. What are we getting compared to similar regional carriers?
Okay, well, that is an extremely broad question because obviously every carrier has its own requirements and its own history and culture. So I don't quite know exactly what that means, but I will say we are at the first or second, I think maybe one step third in the industry, regional industry for pay scale. So we maintain that. We're the only one besides SkyWest that has ground holding pay. We're one of the few that still has rigs, so that's good. We have the highest per diem in the regional industry, even with the 210, then when it goes to 225 for sure. I'm not sure what else to talk about. There's lots of little, things that we already have a lot of things that other people in the industry other carriers don't have. So I don't know. Do you know who wrote that question? If they can clarify it a little bit.
Can I jump in a little bit there, Kimberly? This is Joe Burns. I'm the director of bargaining at AFA. And in my capacity as director, I've worked on a lot of the regional contracts and part of overseeing bargaining. And I think it's pretty clear that even entering these negotiations, the Horizon contract is one of our best contracts in the regional industry. So if you look at a lot of the provisions in terms of the, having rigs and so forth, those are items that almost all of the other regionals did not have. What we've seen in the last couple of years is we've been able to make some improvements in some of the regional contracts where we're starting, especially the wholly owns, where we're starting to get some rigs, but mainly in the form of, a daily minimum, but not as many of the rigs you have. I think in terms of like Kimberly said, with your per diem, that's going to be top of the industry for the regionals for the per diem. And then the pay provision, I think it was pretty clear that you all were already pretty close to being at the top. We got some good agreements at Endeavor and PSA lately that helped us, because every time someone gets a good contract, it helps us bargain the other ones. And we were able to, sort of use those rates that we got at other carriers to get an increase on top of that to bring you there's a step or two that's a little bit different, but in the scale as a whole would be top of the industry. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, I agree with that. What's next, Lisa?
Okay, the next question. Hang on one second. I'm pulling up our document.
You know, I think we could, this is a small enough group that we could probably have them ask questions if they do the raise your hand thing. Do you guys have that on there?
Oh, that would be great.
Do you guys have that? Where you can raise your hand if you have a question? Should be set up that way.
It should be. I can see every.
On the bottom of the screen, reaction, you can either raise your hand or you can clap or do a thumbs up, so you could use that.
Just ask a question. So Heidi, I'm going to unmute you. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, thanks for doing this. My question is in regards to rescheduling of trips. It
Okay.
says when I read over it that the trips would have to follow in the footprint of the original trip. And I believe it couldn't go after 2 hours after the release time, something like that. But what would the footprint, is there an exact like
So the
2
footprint,
hours before the original show or?
yeah. So currently it's just on the same days of the trip. So it could be, you could have a 2 o'clock check-in and you're a commuter and you get switched to a 5 a.m. check-in, right? So this
Mhm.
means it can't start any earlier than your original start time, and it can release only up to 2 hours after your original release time.
Okay, so it cannot start before your original showtime.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, that's much better. Okay,
Yeah, definitely.
thank you.
Sure.
All right. We have another hand up here. I'm going to unmute our iPad user.
Hi
Are you there?
This is Debbie and Nicole.
Hi, Debbie and Nicole.
Nicole's question is, since we're doing it together, she's more advanced in the technology stuff, but my question had to do with at the end of the tentative agreement, the new side letters have more to do with the pay scale effective date, October 1st, 2020. I'm just wondering why it's going to take that long for the pay scale to go into effect, and why wouldn't it just start on May 1st when the date of signing goes into effect?
Okay, I believe that actually should say September. We were going back and forth, and I think when I copied the wrong one in, so it actually is September. So the reason, Nicole, is when we first negotiated this, we obviously intended everything to start on May 1st. That was never going to be in question. They were all on board with that. But then prior to actually getting the sign sealed and delivered, COVID hit, and they went into their cash crunch, which, you know, whatever you can say about them, they're not making this one up. There is absolutely a drive across the air group to conserve cash. So they basically were holding up the agreement, and we were worried that they were going to renege on the whole thing, to be honest. So that was the compromise that we reached, is to give them a few months of breathing room and then start paying that.
Yeah, so, and just to jump in a little bit more, this is Joe Burns again. We're really seeing this throughout the industry. Anytime you run into a situation where, which we've never run into like this, where the revenue's down 90%, the companies are very, very concerned about cash burn. So they tend to really be looking at, you know, in terms of forward projection, how much they're spending while they're maintaining the operation and not having much revenue coming in. So what we're seeing at all of the carriers, I just worked on the Hawaiian agreement, and at the Hawaiian agreement, you know, normally you get your sign-in bonus on day one, and, you know, they weren't willing to do that. They weren't willing to, you know, put that expenditure of money. So that got staged out over a longer period. We're finding when we look at the early outs that are being offered, let's say at American and the wholly owns that we represent, normally, you know, folks would retire and they would get a set amount of money to leave at a certain time. In all of these agreements, those are being staged out over a very long period of time. So I think similarly here, we were able to get this TA, you know, and I think the timing was somewhat fortuitous that we were able to get this TA done, or mainly done, before the financial crisis hit and the COVID crisis hit. But because of that, you know, there's really the employer was really concerned over the next few months about spending even more cash. So we had to work out a deal, and they didn't want you to get paid until next year. Your committee said that was completely, unacceptable. We managed to get it to September plus get the back pay. So it's one of those things that you bargain for and you go back and forth, but that was to finalize the deal. That was the final agreement.
Okay, and it looks like the back pay is going to be paid out on May 5th, 2021.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
I think
Okay,
it's
and then
actually
how-
paid on the May 20th. I think it's actually paid on the adjustment check, or what we call the adjustment check, on May 20th. Isn't it, Kimberly?
It's either the 5th or it's either the 5th or the 20th. I'm sorry. I
It doesn't
unfortunately
matter.
this is,
I mean, the piece of paper says May 5th, but if it's the 20th, I mean, it's still within that same month.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay, well, that does help understand that a little bit better. And as far as that goes, then we just have to pay close attention when the time comes of like actually what hours we worked to make sure we did get it correctly, that pay increase, and how many hours we worked.
Absolutely. So you'll know how many hours you worked, or actually it's not even worked, how many hours you got paid for, because that would include vacation or sick time too. September through December 31st. And then you can do the difference between your current pay rate and what would be your pay rate under the TA, and then that's how much you'll get paid in May.
Yeah, and then of course, with the tentative agreement, the following year, 2021, starting in January, we don't get any pay increase because of the per diem going up. That's what you
correct.
guys stated yesterday.
Yeah, if you're under 20 years, you obviously would still get your raise on your longevity date, but not a contract raise. Yeah.
And then with the ratification bonuses, do you know off the top of your head what is taxed? Is it like 30%, 40%, 20%?
Well, it depends what state you're in, right? Because Washington doesn't have income tax and Oregon does. So basically Joe can correct me, but I believe the IRS rate is 25% withholding. But again, that's withholding. So when you pay your taxes the following April, if you overpaid, you'll get the difference back. It's just that's the law for taxing bonuses.
Okay.
And then also you are getting the second piece of that signing bonus, which was supposed to be the way that it originally was spelled out. You would get the second part of the signing bonus in that year that you were not receiving that pay increase in the pay scale.
Yeah, you still will. Yeah.
You will get that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we have a question from Nick. Nick, I'm going to unmute you.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Fantastic. So jumping off of that, my question is about what happens if we are not with the company when those payouts are supposed to happen, whether that is our decision or the industry, or as they said in the big video chat of like, we're going to be a smaller company come post September. So if we are not with the company, will we still get those either back pay for the time that we worked from after September of when that kicks in, if we're not there, or if we're not there when the ratification checks come in, are we still going to get there because we remember when we signed, even if it's not when it's paid out?
Okay, so Nick, the answer to that question is a split answer. So if you leave for any reason before May, you will sorry, I dropped my mouse. You will get paid out the money that's due between September and December. So if you leave in January, you'll get that money. If you leave in November, you'll get whatever it is from September 1st through the day that you leave. So you will always get that pay increase piece. The ratification bonus, you have to be on the seniority list at the day it's paid. But if you are on a leave or a furlough, you will get it when you come back to active service.
Gotcha. So if the industry picks back up and the pathways to Alaska resume, if you're not if you're not with Horizon when that bonus comes out, you're not getting that ratification perk, sounds like.
If you've gone to work for Alaska, no, you're not, because you're no longer on the Horizon seniority list.
Or if you've gone back into whatever other industry,
Correct. It's right.
If you're not, okay.
Yeah.
Even though you were there.
I don't know what your seniority, Nick, is, but a couple contracts ago, we had a similar thing where the second part of the signing bonus was paid 2 years in, and that we're following the same rules from that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. And Joelle, you had a question from a member. Are you there?
I am here. Hello. Hey, flight attendant has a question regarding the commuter code. Is it based on the top 15% of registered commuters per base?
So the answer to that is no. So let me back up. As long as you register as a commuter and pick a commuter city, you are covered by the commuter policy. You may or may not have the W-5 code, but you can absolutely use the commuter policy and you will not be disciplined if you can't get to work because of a commuter failure. The 15% is the entire system seniority list, but a lot of people are, but it's, let me rephrase that. If 15% of the top seniority, okay, is, you look at your seniority list and cut off what's 15%. But a heck of a lot of those people are not commuters, right? So it's up to 15% of the whole flight attendants can hold the W-5. Currently, the number of commuters we have is about equal to 15% of the seniority list, which is where we came up with that number. So we're assuming that all or most people will have that to start with.
We had them pull the seniority list when we were discussing this at the table. So we got the current seniority list of commuters. So we made sure that we did that math ourselves to see where those numbers were falling.
So it's only an enhancement. Nobody is losing anything because of this. I want to be clear on that because some people are thinking only 15% can commute, and that is not correct. Does that answer your question? Or, well, I guess you were reading a question, Joelle, sorry.
Yeah.
Does that bring up questions for anyone else, or does that make sense?
Let's see if we have any questions. If you guys have a question, raise your hand using your reactions button on your screen, and we'll take some more questions.
It's not actually the reactions button. It is over in the participants. You bring up the participant on your right side, and then at the bottom right, it'll say raise hand.
Ah, it's in a different place on my screen. Thank you, Nick. Hopefully everyone heard that. It's by the participant list, everyone. Okay, how about if we take one of the questions that's been sent in? Why are we not delaying the vote?
Okay,
I'm good at these big general ones for you, Kimberly.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll ask that and I'll let Joe chime in after I finish the short answer. Not that I'm known for ever giving a short answer to anything. Basically, we don't want to delay the vote because anytime we don't have a signed agreement, the company can walk away from it. And we don't want to give them that chance. Joe, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so one of the concerns that we've had in recent months, and I've been involved in a number of tentative agreements in the last month or two that we finalized, is that our main concern, frankly, is a lot of these agreements that, the Horizon agreement, we did one at Norwegian, we did one at Hawaiian. The bulk of these agreements were negotiated before the crisis hit. And before the carriers started seeing, drop-offs of flying and revenue, that we've never seen before in the industry. So frankly, our concern at a lot of these carriers hasn't been, oh, should we slow it down? It's been a real concern about delaying these votes and allowing the employers the opportunity to get out of a deal that they would not have made at this point in time. I think we strongly believe, we had Dan Akins, our economist, on the phone yesterday on the Zoom call, and indicated that that we're entering a new phase of bargaining, and it's not, it's unlikely that we're gonna be able to see agreements like this that have pay increases and per diem increasements and improvements. And in fact, looking forward, 6 months down the road, it's more likely that employers are gonna be coming to ask us for relief. They've already done that at a number of carriers, and we're putting our foot down and saying it's it's not our problem. Doing concessions isn't going to resolve it. So anyway, so in terms of the timeline, in our Norwegian contract, which is a foreign-owned carrier that we reached a tentative agreement, I think, in the end of February. We shortened the voting timeline. That timeline had originally been scheduled to be a lot longer, but we knew the carrier was basically going to be shutting down the U.S. operation. So we shortened the time frame to have that voting be done in 7 days, and the flight attendants were able to, overwhelmingly approve the deal. At Hawaiian Airlines, we were similarly concerned where we got the agreement, but we reached the agreement right when the company was, or not the company, the governor had instituted a quarantine in Hawaii. So right after it went to the MEC, an hour later, that got instituted. Our concern was that the employer was going to pull the deal. So we were able to do an email vote there in 7 days. I think here at Horizon, we did it a little bit longer because we had a bunch of back and forth with the employer, when we were finalizing the deal about, their concerns about cash burn and so forth. And, if we delay the vote, it opens the door for the employer to basically pull the deal, because until you have a final deal, an assigned document that's a ratified agreement, there's always the opportunity for the employer to say, hey, something else has happened and we want to pull the deal. So that's the, I think the answer on the voting piece of it. And, I think we talked about yesterday about, why it's better to have a contract that was negotiated prior to the economic crisis than one that was negotiated later.
Thanks, Joe.
Looks like Nick has a question. Nick Hoback.
Yeah, I wanted to give plenty of other people opportunities, but I do have more. In regards to the biggest change, obviously, is the reserve. With that, what is it, twice a month, 24-hour period?
Yes.
That's one of my biggest concerns. Like, how do you sleep in that? What happens if you are ready to go, you're sitting by the phone, and then you finally decide, okay, it's been long enough, now I'm going to sleep. You get 20 minutes in and they call you. Like, if you're not fit to fly in that period, I mean, I know this is apparently how Alaska does it, which is somewhat reassuring.
They do it, and a lot of our carriers have 24-hour reserve period. Not a lot, but some. It used to be more common. We used to have 24-hour reserve here back in the day. Some of you must remember that, Kirk. So the answer to that question is you are expected to remain in a state of rest, even though you're, have an obligation to duty. You're not supposed to be out, making yourself exhausted. But obviously, if you feel that you're not safe to fly, then you have to use your fatigue policy. But, but you can usually, you should be able to tell by looking at the credit sort list how likely you are to be called. And I will add that the extended reserves are usually called last. Because they want to hoard them because they can cover anything, which is not the case. If an AM is about to go off her wrap, they're going to use her before they're going to use an extended reserve.
Right.
So I don't know if that gives you any assurance, but yes, that's the answer. It could happen.
Okay, and then after you finish, and granted, I have not gotten to the reserve section on the TA. To read all the details about that, but I'm assuming once that 24 period is up, you have at least that 10-hour, right? Like you can't.
No, yes, that's correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't go right back into another 14-hour AM reserve period. No.
At least there's that.
Yeah. And you can preference which day of your block you want to be converted if it has to happen. So if you want to,
right, there's no guarantee. But
no, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee.
Kimberly, I had to step away for just a super fast second. Did you talk about how they wanted to have, how they brought in reserve when it started? to kind of talk about the historical, where it started from, with them bringing in everything that was not,
Oh, no.
I mean, I think it's a good background for people to understand. They brought in everything that was to their benefit in the reserve section, and then the committee had
She's
to
talking
fight to get
about,
all of the pieces in that would benefit anyone to it. So it was actually quite an interesting session for a few sessions on that.
right. So what Lisa's saying is they went to the Alaska Reserve section, stripped out all the good parts and offered us all the bad parts. And we're like, do you think we're that stupid that we can't look it up and see what it says? So yeah.
So we actually, took that and started to work with that and build in the things that got the pay in there and the picking up from open time and all of those other components that would actually start to improve the quality of life of flight attendants.
So how different is our reserve in this TA from Alaska's current reserve? Did we get all of their good things back, or?
We got, well,
it's a start. We don't get everything all at once, but it's better.
I'm going to answer that in a understanding that they do a very different kind of flying than we do. We do very little red eye flying, for example. They actually have, they can be converted to extended reserve twice a month. That's what we have. They also can be converted more for premium pay, and we just drew the line. We said we'd rather just not be converted more, even if you might get paid more for it, right? They have some things in there that if they're contacted during rest, and then they fly, that they will be paid extra. And we just said, you're not going to contact us during rest. It's not like,
Yep.
Don't even go there. We'd rather
Right.
not be contacted. So you can't look at it line for line, but I think that, and there are some things because their flying is different that we just don't do. But basically it's very similar.
We have
Great.
one question
you.
that came in from our email, and this is to expand on the commuter issue. Being a commuter, why did we not get what the pilots and both work groups at Alaska have?
Lisa, why don't you answer that one? You were there. Ugh. We know. Trust me, we know. Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, well, we tried. And this was one of the next to the last thing that was completed with the committees, because we refused to take anything more than what was being given at all other work groups. And what they've said is it was horridly disruptive when the pilots got it, and they weren't going to do that to all of the other employees again, that they learned this lesson when they did that one. And so with us, they were not going to do that. So it was a no-go on anything commuter related at all. And the first few passes they brought to us were, they were awful to flight attendants. So we said, no, we're not doing that. And we're not ending this until we have something. So as Kimberly is very good at saying to us at the negotiations table, they're stepping stones, and we're building. And this is the first time that we have had anything more from a commuter standpoint than what, our current language was. So it is a start, but there was zero negotiation to get what the other three work groups have. Zero, zip, nothing. And we talked about it over and over and over and over and over again, to the point of exhaustion.
Yeah, they had three main reasons. One, that if they gave it to us, they'd have to give it to mechanics and dispatchers and, gate agents, most of whom don't commute. So that never really resonated.
That's right.
Second, they said that some of our flight attendants were against it. And we know that is true. There are some who, know that will possibly occasionally impact their ability to travel for pleasure. And thirdly, that it would just cause a huge amount of angst among the other groups for the same reasons as it would cause for some of our flight attendants. But, bottom line, this provision costs them nothing. And we thought, especially in this situation with COVID, that they should be giving us things that cost nothing. But anyway, we got as much as we pushed them as far as we could. I do believe that.
Nick, did you have another question? I think I saw that you had your hand up.
No, I got answered.
Okay. Joelle, there was a point you wanted to make. Hang on one second. Are you unmuted? You wanted to clarify or reiterate something on the reserve issue? I lost Joelle here.
I'm trying to unmute her, but it's not going.
Okay. Well, when she may have stepped away, so we'll come
Oh.
back to it. Let's see if we have another one. Nope, I do not have another emailed one yet. Anyone else have a question that's online with us? We'll check for hands again. Okay, let's see while one is coming in.
Lisa, did you say we had a list of questions that had come in?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get pulled up on my mothership, as I call it, my big desktop.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get that list up, and I'm lost in documents at the moment. Okay, I think this is it. Does the reduction in the crew wheel, does that benefit offset by the 25-cent increase? Did we do any cost analysis on what the wheel was costing versus what we were getting in per diem?
They're talking about the vending machines?
Yes.
The increase in
Crew wheel.
per diem outweighs the cost of the vending machines for sure.
So the vending machines are less than the cost of the increase.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Oh, let's see here. We've got one coming in on my phone, I believe. Going back and forth here. Oh, Joelle said she's having connectivity issues. She wanted to reiterate the midnight to midnight. Our flights don't operate all night long. So that reiterate midnight to midnight. I'm not sure exactly what she
I think
meant.
she's talking about the 24-hour reserve, that it's not as horrible as it sounds, or as it would be for Alaska that does a lot of red-eye flying. You know, we don't do much flying between, well, we don't do many if any takeoffs between midnight and 5 a.m., right? So there wouldn't be any call out for that.
All right, here's the next one. Our shoes cost more than $50. Why did we not get more than $50 reimbursement?
Go ahead, Lisa.
I wish Joelle was on. Oh, Joelle, we can unmute her. Nope, it's still not unmuting. She's blocked us. So why didn't we get more? Again, it's about the stepping stones. And I think the company didn't want us, it's been mentioned before, the company didn't want us spending all of our money on shoes and then not having money for replacement pieces. It's also a start. We haven't had replacement for shoes before, so it was new. And I think that it's a good start to have versus nothing, but it definitely was something they were not willing to do all along the way. And this was something we continually presented, that these shoes were costing us more. We were having to get all new shoes. You know, we've all had shoes for all of these years that we've been working with, but this was a new cost to all of us, and we were feeling it. And we beat it as much as we could possibly beat it. It was zero the whole time. And then we finally were able to achieve the $50. So we were actually pleased to walk away with something. It wasn't what we wanted, but we did get something into the contract for reimbursement for shoes. You want to add anything, Kimberly?
No, that's correct. And if you can find blue boots, let us know. What else do you got, Lisa?
Okay.
Oh, Kirk has a question.
Oh,
His
hey.
hand's up. Go ahead, Kirk. All right. It's not letting me unmute anyone. Kirk, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
There we
thank
go.
you.
Good morning. Yeah.
all fucking day.
You're talking, there was a question earlier about the crew.
Nice.
There was a question. I think everyone's been unmuted. Yeah, everyone's been unmuted.
Hang on, let me go through and.
All right, I can mute all. And it says you should be able to unmute yourself. So, okay. Kirk, try unmuting yourself again. Sorry, guys. We're really kind of new at this.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
So there was a question regarding the crew vending machine, the Wheel of Death, as the nickname is.
Right.
Back when there was a cost analysis on it, it was about a nickel a piece, but that was during the when the pilots had access to it. It was costing about a nickel a piece per crew member. And if anyone remembers when the pilots, or if they were here when the pilots had access to it, they were kind of greedy with it and using it quite frequently, which was frustrating for our flight attendants because they have an opportunity to get off the aircraft. They don't have to be on the aircraft by D30. So back in the day when we were discussing in negotiations about 10 years ago, that's what the cost was then. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, they did give us the current cost, and I was kind of, I don't remember it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but I was shocked at how low it was. Okay, Lexi, you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Hey, so Kimberly, yesterday you mentioned, actually, let me start over. Well, we've been seeing and hearing some comments from flight attendants about being willing to wait it out, to say that this contract isn't what we deserve, and that they don't want to vote yes because we deserve more. And well, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. I was wondering if you could touch on what opportunity cost really means.
Sure.
And if we did decide to, not ratify this agreement, the time frame that it would take to get back to the table and what we would lose in the meantime.
Okay, sure. So opportunity cost is the dollar cost of waiting for something. So for example, if you forgo a 4.75% raise, it starts in September, and you end up with a 5.75% raise a year later, yes, you're getting more ultimately, but you're never going to make up for that year that you didn't get the original 4.75. So that's the opportunity cost of waiting. If you guys vote it down, and I do want to say you absolutely deserve more. Please don't think this. And none of us deserves a pandemic. Let's just be clear on that. If it gets voted down, we'll have to regroup. We would have to survey the flight attendants to determine why it had failed, although I think we know the answer to that. We might or might not apply for mediation, depending on whether we thought the company was going to actually actively engage with us. And then we would have to get them to sit down with us. So we're probably not talking about getting back to the table until fall at the earliest, and then however long it takes to negotiate from then. But the other piece that I don't want to be overlooked is that once you're back at the table, it's not like the TA is the starting line. The foundation. They can take things back off the table. So, and given the current economic situation, I don't think we want to be in that situation, to be perfectly honest, where they're not even going to agree to what we have in this TA. Does that answer your question, Lex?
Yeah, thanks. I have a follow-up.
Joe, you want to follow up on that? I don't know where Joe went. Okay, never mind.
I'm here. No, I mean, I think you covered it. I mean,
okay.
People just have to make an assessment of where they think things are going to be in 6 months or a year. I mean, if you've been following the, sort of comments of the, Parker from American and United, Kirby and those folks yesterday, I mean, they're talking about the airline industry being, a third less, come October. We got the protections into October, but they're talking about cutting possibly, one of the articles I saw talked about 123,000 airline jobs being cut, basically a third of the industry. So, our concern is, our concern is that the bargaining going forward is going to be really tough. I mean, I had a deal at one of the carriers that this was like right at the beginning of the crisis, like about, it's 3 weeks ago, a month ago, I guess, maybe it was a little over a month ago, and I was bargaining, and they were going to get back to us in the morning. And, I finally thought we were going to have a deal. And then they found out that their flying had been cut by the main line by this was nothing back then, but it had been cut like 20-30%. So they're like, we can't even offer what we were offering yesterday. And those negotiations are stalled out. And I don't know when or how, they're going to get going again. So this isn't to be, not to be all negative, but it's going to be kind of a rough period coming up. And if you have an open contract, I mean, people can, have to vote how they want to vote and, make your decision. But if there's an open contract, you leave the door open to the employer to come in, not just to take off the improvements that you have, but you know, what if the employers all of a sudden want concessions? If we have a closed contract, we're like, well, the contract's closed. So you got an open contract, you know, things can look a little bit differently. So that's why we've been, you know, at least at the international office, you know, we were working pretty feverishly where we could get contracts closed out that we could. Some of the other ones, you know, we weren't able to. There were a couple of regionals that now are kind of sitting out there. You know, I don't know, we'll get back to the table, but it's not going to be easy.
Thanks, Joe. So I guess I just had one quick follow-up because in the call yesterday, I think someone said that ballots were going to start arriving in a few days. And my understanding is that there's been a change to the procedure of voting since the last time Horizon had a vote. And that is that you can no longer change your vote once it's been entered. Is that correct? Okay, so that, to me, I feel like that's really important because in the past we have seen a lot of people vote and then go in and change their vote. And now that you can't do that, I think I want to personally encourage everyone to really think long and hard and make your vote based on rational choices and not just emotion at first, because you can't change it. Once it goes in, it's in and it's locked. So. And
that's one of the reasons we wanted to have the presentation yesterday prior to people receiving the ballot so they could have the information before they vote.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Lexi. One of the other questions that was submitted is, does this mean now that informational picketing will be okay?
Yes.
I guess we could talk about how that plays into some of the things we did before that we weren't able to do. I think there was another airline who wanted to come in with us and do some work on some of we did one event at the airport and it had to be leafleting. So it very specifically needed to be leafleting, and this will allow us to have the ability to do more going forward. Correct, Kimberly?
Right. So what it comes down to is picketing looks much more serious to passengers and to the public, and in fact to the company and the news media than simply leafleting. We had a group that, I think they were the IAM, that wanted to come and picket at our event in CTAG, and we had to tell them they couldn't because it was a violation of our contract and we didn't want them and us to end up in court. So this allows us to do informational picketing, which puts a lot more pressure on the company than simply leafleting, which is normally like our first level action and then escalating to picketing. But under our current contract, that was as far as we could escalate. So this should help us for our next contract negotiations.
There's another question about commuting. Lots of questions on commuting. Does this change mean I will have to lock an address into my address on file? So what address, I guess basically we could go over what address needs to be used for the new commuter policy.
You have to use your PeopleSoft address, which is going to be the address that's on file with the company. So yeah, you can't use your second home unless that's your PeopleSoft address. You can't use your daughter's home or whatever, which I know we've had some people do. So.
Anyone else online with us? We've got, let's see, we have 28 people. You guys must have some questions. We want to get to yours.
Did you just let Tracy in?
I did just let Tracy in.
Okay, I just saw her and then she was gone. Okay.
So let's see if you guys can raise your hand and ask some questions using that raise hand feature. Kirk, oh, nope, Kirk didn't. He did and he didn't.
Lexi's hand is up. Debbie Miller's hand is up.
Oh, let's get Debbie. Lexi, I'm not. Let's get Debbie and then we'll get Lexi. Debbie, you should be unmuted. Are you there? Oh.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes. Debbie and Nancy again.
It's Debbie and Nicole from Alaska.
Oh, Nicole. Sorry.
It's another Nicole question because we were kind of confused. I know this is the question that more pertains to the unknown in the future. So come October, when potential more furloughs happen, which we're not sure, does our contract protect us from being laid off as opposed to going on furlough, involuntarily furloughed?
Our contract doesn't distinguish between layoff and furlough, really. in a lot of industries, layoff means permanent goodbye. We're never rehiring you. Furlough means you have recall rights. So that's what we have. So our system has to go that they'll decide how many people they need to furlough. Their people. They have to then put out for voluntary furloughs first, which is people saying, I'm willing to go. And then we'll have to furlough any number between 100 and how many voluntaries they took. So you will have recall rights for 18 months, and we've never not have everyone been recalled. So that wanted to be recalled.
Okay, so the recall rights would be 18 months. So it's still kind of black and white there. So we just don't know if they can start laying off people.
I'm not quite understanding your question.
Yeah, so can I jump in?
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, right now, folks are protected by the CARES Act, and the all of the carriers or peers are taking the money, which includes the restrictions on conducting involuntary furloughs until the end of September. After that point, it's not just a Verizon contract, it's throughout the industry, our contracts do not prevent the employer from furloughing flight attendants. And, all the projections are at this point is that there will, likely be some furloughs. How many, it's going to depend on your flying's obviously allocated by by Alaska. So it's going to depend on whether or not you have furloughs is going to probably have a large part about how they decide to allocate the flying. I can tell you that we are, the Sarah Nelson, our international president, has been working feverishly to protect all airline employees. And part of that, they just got through the stimulus package that had the CARES Act and the provisions for airline workers. And there's going to be more legislation they're already working on stimulus for, and there's going to be a push to provide protections for, further protections for airline workers in that, whether it's providing continued health care. I know a lot of folks are talking about that. So, I think that's just the general point is they can furlough, but they have to do it according to set rules.
Okay. So it sounds like we could be protected up to 18 months if we have to take a furlough.
Correct.
Okay. And then also,
and they can't, I just want to say one more thing. They can't hire somebody else while anyone's on furlough. So you would be the first, current flight attendants have the right to come back before they hire anyone new.
Okay, that's good. We just want a little clarification on, actually being worried about just being completely laid off and saying goodbye. So
no. How long have you been here, Debbie? I'm sorry.
Nicole and I both have been here 5.5 years.
Okay, so you weren't here when we did the furloughs before. Yeah. Okay.
But we've been offered furloughs due to an Anchorage-based closure. So
right.
Debbie
right.
took 18 months and got to come back. So right. I continued to work. And then also we just wanted to mention on the commuter policy for anybody that's worried about this 15% cap or whatever, a lot of people aren't taking into consideration that most of, like maybe about half or a quarter, I don't even know the percentage, that most of us commute on Alaska airline flights. So we're not even considered in that 15% cap. So that kind of helps for those people that are actually commuting on Horizon metal. There's a ton of people that commute on Alaska metal. So that doesn't even help us at all. And we're happy to see that the 72 hours is going to definitely be a little bit of an extra bonus for us to list for those flights. So I'm happy to see that at least.
Okay. All right, Lexi.
Hi. Yeah. I changing gears a little bit, but probably the biggest thing that, as I read through it, concerns me is is the duty period. And so I was hoping, I was hoping you could walk us through what the discussion at the table was surrounding the duty period and why we ended up where the TA is.
Sure. So we did not want to go away from the duty table. And I know that for those of you who don't know Lexi very well, she was our MEC president, and she was MEC president and on the negotiating committee at the time that we went to the 117s, and then when we went to the 121s to keep the duty table. So this is an issue that's very important to her, and we totally get that, and we fought very hard. They came in wanting a 12.5-hour day, end of story, no discussion. We kind of went back and forth. We did some research on current pairings and past pairings, and we were kind of looking at it like if we went to, Lisa, you can chime in a little bit about this, about the 11 hours and the buffer. So really with a 12-hour duty day and the buffer they put in, they can't really build it more than what, 11, Lisa? 11 and a half?
Mhm. Yep, 11 for an 11 and a half, 11 and a half for a 12.
Yeah. But bottom line, this was one of their number one things, and we were not going to get to an agreement without it. It was very, very painful.
Did we open on staying with the table, or did we open on like a 10-hour day, or Alaska's 10 and a half, or?
No, we just opened on the table.
The table, okay.
Yeah, we weren't trying to open that door at all.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
We
Sorry.
were able to get us some of the improvements to the contract and build those in on our side, because they were not wavering on the 12 hours. They were not. We got them down to the 12 from the 12 and a half. And then we were able to do a few things to protect in other areas, I think is probably what I would say. So there were other things that we were able to say, well, we're not bending on this, because we knew there would be no movement whatsoever. So after you've gone through it for 12 months, you know that there's no movement in certain areas, none at all. So it was a big learning lesson for me to see that they're just steadfast on certain things, steadfast.
As are we.
So we did have Peter do some background work for us. We reached out, we really did reach out to the committee chairs. We reached out to Peter for the pairings part of it. And we asked him, what type of a buffer have they historically used, and what does it do for us to protect, and where is that kind of sweet spot if we have to do this? Where is the sweet spot? And that's how, when we finally got to the 12, we were pushing 11 and a half for most of the time, because that would mean 11. But we finally did at least protect from 12 and a half and from a true 12 by getting that half hour that we know is in there.
So I think if I'm remembering correctly, the Green Book had 12 and a half.
So yeah, it used to be the book before the Green Book had 13, and then we got to 12 and a half.
12 and a half.
And we went to the table.
Still, okay.
And the only reason we ended up in the table in the first place is because we were under the pilot FARs. And when they went to 117s, we got that too.
I'm going to mute now because of my neighbor's dog. So
okay.
No, but thanks, Lexi, for bringing up what it was in those previous contracts, because that is important to kind of see the historical on it. And Nick, you have a question?
Yeah, about the ground time, which first off, super happy to see something in that regard, because especially when you're sitting on a snow delay for like 3 hours, if the brake's not off, you're not getting paid for that. So glad to see that. Curious on when that starts. Does the timeline start for that when they start boarding, and then at 30 minutes past that, that's when the ground time kicks?
No, it's scheduled departure.
Okay, so 30 minutes past the scheduled departure, that's when that clock starts on how much you're gonna get paid. And then
right,
you leave at 31, you're getting a 60th of $15.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Great. I mean, yeah, glad to see at least something in there. So thank y'all for fighting for that.
All right, Jamie has a question. Jamie, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, does that mean door closure or
Depends.
release?
It depends what aircraft you're on, right? So once you are into block time, and that's defined by what aircraft you're on, you are not getting ground holding, you're getting block pay, which is more. So
okay, so with flight attendants, in a sense, if we ratify, it's better to do our regular procedure, and then this is the bonus if we're in this situation of maintenance. Doesn't matter if the, okay.
Correct.
Deal.
Yes.
And then if I could ask another question, is the backstory of changing the reserve? I'm assuming it, why is it such a focus of changing the reserve in such a way?
The company's philosophy in this negotiations was obviously they were willing to give us more money. You know, there is more money in the contract. Whether it's enough is another question in normal times, but they wanted productivity. And this does currently, because of the way our flights are and the way they have to sometimes have multiple airport reserve line schedules, multiple in different bases, reserve periods, and this just sets it, if they can go to 14 and then 14-hour reserve and then fly, they can get by with fewer people. And we said, well, if you'll remember from the things we were putting out at the time, we were not excited about going to the system. We actually got some feedback from people who wanted it, though, for various reasons. I think mostly because there's more money in it. But we decided, okay, fine. If you're going to get that productivity, you're going to pay for it. So I don't think they're actually going to end up saving money on reserve the way that it is now structured with the extra $250 per block hour, et cetera. But that's the backstory. They wanted productivity, and we wanted to make sure that we got compensated for anything they got productivity out of.
And we did reach out to Alaska to see how unhappy they were with the 24-hour reserve. And the feedback that we got is they really aren't, quote unquote, unhappy with that piece. Like if they could change anything, it's, that wasn't something that was big on their list of things, that it was a change for us, and change is difficult, but it's something that has really been adapted pretty well on their side of things. And we feel like with limiting how many times they can do that in a month, it helps mitigate by having that 24-hour in there.
Well, and to be fair, they've had that since 1999. So, there's nobody who's been on reserve at Alaska for 21 years, right? Or 21 years. So the people who are coming into it now, that's just what they know. And
Yep.
And our thought too was that, prior to COVID and half of our flight attendants being on reserve, that people were going through reserve fairly quickly. We had a lot of hiring classes in the pipeline. So that maybe has changed a little bit, obviously, but
Actually,
that was part of
that's a good point that because we were pre-COVID, we did see how quickly people were transitioning through reserve in most of the bases, and some not, but in most of the bases, they were transitioning through reserve so quickly that it was going to be mitigated some as well. So, yep. Okay, do we want one from the list since we don't have any hands? Holidays. We added more days, but the company still offers more holidays to their admin workers and regular workers. Why did we not get more holidays?
Well, same as always, we opened on that. And we did get 2 more than we had before, which is something it's again, baby steps, building blocks. But the other way to look at it is you guys get a minimum of 13 days off a month, and the regular employees do not. They get 8 or 9 days. They just get the weekend. So I think that's part of the company's philosophy on that.
Okay, and the next question: how can we ensure that eCrew will be glitch free for jetway trades to work?
Well, I don't know that we can ever say that eCrew is going to be glitch free, but there's going to be programming required, and we'll be involved in testing that. It shouldn't be that much more complicated than current trading, which flight attendant to flight attendant trading. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you that eCrew will be glitch free, but I know that they intend to do it as best. I mean, we Lisa, help me out here. We intend it to work. Company intends it to work.
Yeah, and I mean, at a certain point in time, there's a process that, you know, we can grieve that process if it isn't working. So, I mean, there are some protections put in place that will be able to hold them accountable to it. But there will be a committee that'll be working on all of these things together to make sure that they're implemented and they're tested, and that all of that testing shows things are working. So, I mean, there will always be technical issues within a company, and we hope that they're quick and quickly resolved. But if they're not quickly resolved, just like we got tired of the SAP issues, we'll present another scenario to them if that were to continue to happen on a regular basis. All right. Do we see hands? I do not see hands. So will CDOs return?
CDOs are a question of marketing schedule and what's the most efficient way to build them. There's nothing in the contract that says they have to build them either currently or under the new TA.
Okay.
Just, yeah. Jane's iPad has a question. Jane, do you want to unmute yourself?
I don't know how.
There you are.
You
Hi.
did it.
Okay. Okay, so crew scheduling can take trips out of the pink and assign them to reserves.
Correct.
All right, so, and they're granted in seniority order, is that correct?
Yes. Well, to the extent between days of availability. So like if the junior person has a 2-day trip, if the junior person has let me say this. So you have a reserve who's good for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to take the 2-day trip from the junior flight attendant versus a 4-day from a senior flight attendant because they can't give that 4-day trip to the 2-day reserve.
Okay, so anyway, that wasn't exactly my question. My question is more about, and maybe you explained it because it's just what's available on that day, but there's nothing to prevent somebody from throwing their whole line into the pink. All right.
Right, but they're still responsible for it if it doesn't get picked up. And I want to be clear that crew scheduling is going to use the open time trips first because the company is liable for those. They're going to be taking flight attendant trip, right? So it's not like, it doesn't mean, it's not a way to, you cannot guarantee that you're going to drop a trip because you put it in the pink, okay?
Okay.
My guess would be that they will use it when it's, when they have flight attendant reserves who aren't going to break guarantee and they're paying them to sit, they might as well pay them a lower wage to fly than you, right?
Right.
So I wouldn't count on it as being a way to get rid of your trips. I don't think it's going to happen every day by any means.
Okay, I think I see it a little more clearly. I wasn't really thinking about dropping my whole line, however, that's a great idea.
Well, sure you were.
I was thinking
were.
a little bit backwards that they were going to pick from the most senior trip the most senior flight attendant's trip available, rather than the most most senior reserve or whatever. Okay, I get it
No,
now.
it's the senior of the people whose trips are in the pink.
Okay, because I was thinking that would be extremely unfair to have part-time line holders drop all their trips, essentially taking part-time lines away from other people that wanted them. No, I understand it now, though. Thanks.
Okay. All right, our next question is, with the sick policy, why was it 12 days before and now we're agreeing to a 10-day policy? And I don't know, Kirk wanted to talk to sick time yesterday at some point, I think. I don't know if Kirk wants to talk to this one. I'm going to unmute you, Kirk.
Yeah, it was specifically to the question. I'm trying to remember what it was yesterday.
I don't remember what it was yesterday, but I mean, it was 12 days, it was 13 days, then it was 12, and now it's 10, and the company made all those changes unilaterally. So we wanted,
because they were not in the contract.
Because it wasn't in the contract. So Kirk, you can talk about how hard you pushed and we all pushed to get it back above 10 again.
Yes, they were adamant of, they wanted to drop it down to 8.
Right, that's right.
When the current policy we have is in, they wanted to drop it down to 8. They were trying to get an agreement with us that we would not take this to arbitration and have an arbitrator decide. So in the end, we have the 10 days before you go into an attendance review, which is now in the contract. Excuse me, not the contract, in this TA. I don't know why I said contract. The TA we were voting on. Does that kind of answer the question, or?
Well, she's reading it first.
So they lose, throughout the industry, the airlines are tightening up their attendance policies, my understanding anyway. So they're all in the Regional Airline Association, they're all meeting and talking. And what was explained to me from management was that Horizon Air is a laughing stock of the industry because we had such a liberal attendance policy compared to other regional airlines. So that's how it was brought forward to me. So they wanted to tighten up the attendance policy that we had in place.
Yeah, and I want to
with
be
the 12 days.
Yeah, I want to add, for those of you who haven't really been in attendance issues, the 10 days doesn't mean that's where you get fired. That's just where they look at you and you go into like a pre-discipline, and then the next occurrence puts you into an oral warning. So there's actually several steps beyond the 10 days. So in a lot of ways, your attendance policy, even though it's worse than it used to be for you guys, is a lot better than a lot of other regionals.
So really to wrap up the question, the reason that we are going to this policy is because we have not been contractually protected, and they've made alterations to it negatively impacting us several times, and we needed to make sure that we had something in the contract that would keep them from being able to continue to deteriorate the sick time policy.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I mentioned, that we were a laughing stock in the regional air industry. I cut out there for a minute. So I was concerned that if we actually took this to arbitration, they would take all the other regional attendance policies and say, look, we want 8 days. All these other regionals have this, grant us the 8 days. We'd be arguing, well, we've always had 12 days. We earned 12 days. That was the argument we've used since 2003. So that was that was a real issue there, whether we want to take this risk to arbitration.
And maybe we should give a little background here as well on some of the things that we were able to achieve. The call out, Kimberly, their original call out, we were able to mitigate that. What was that provision? The 2-hour call out, or my brain is completely toast. Kirk?
The reserve call out?
No, the call out for sick time.
I'm sorry. Right. So currently it just says you have to call out sick basically as soon as you can, but there's no time limit. Now it will say 1 hour, which is either standard or better than standard in the airline industry, because obviously the whole point is they want you to call in sick enough time for them to get a reserve without causing a delay, which in our case would be at 2 hours. So 2 hours prior to departure.
And they were adamant about the 2, and we were able to mitigate that by getting it to the 1. And it's also one of the things they had communicated at the table was important is when reserves are when reserves are being called for an assignment, reserves were calling out at that point in time versus in advance of being called out. And that was negatively impacting the operation and potentially causing cancellations, and may have caused cancellations. So that was part of the discussion at the table is, yes, we equally want to protect the operation, but we're also going to put some limits, and we were able to get that down to that 1 hour versus where they were pushing at the 2 hours.
So on that, there was a few flight attendants, very few, that frequently called out less than 1 hour. They would call out sick, and that was creating a huge disruption, not a huge disruption, but it disrupted the operation. It put stress on the reserves, it put stress on the rescheduler. So that is why they wanted some time limit on that, and they definitely wanted 2 hours. The problem with 2 hours is if you have a 4 a.m. show, you wake up at 2 a.m. and you feel horrible, you're less than 2 hours. You should be able to be ready and be headed to the airport within an hour of your show time. So I think that's the focus of the negotiation committee, to go with the 1 hour instead of the 2 that they really wanted. It still gave them some time, but it gave the flight attendant an opportunity to call out sick if they really were sick. after they woke up. It was an early show.
Any questions? Lisa, do you have more questions on that list?
Don't at the moment.
Okay. Well, anyone? Okay, well, we will be here at the same time every day between now and April 28th, except for this Saturday where we'll be doing the regular presentation like we did yesterday. So
let's do a couple housekeeping things just before we end. I want to reiterate again that we'll be putting the question of the day out today as soon as I have a chance to jump in and edit the question of the day for today. Also, the questions can be posed on our website, afahorizon.org. In the Contact Us tab that is right there in the negotiation section, you can type in your name, email, and submit a question. I will try and take text message questions if people text message them to me. And as long as we have a manageable group like this, we'll probably be able to do hands like we have been doing. Feel free to email me as well if you have a question. I mean, reach out to any of us, Kirk, Joelle, myself, if you have some questions that you want answered. Let's see, what else? The ballots were mailed today. We just got notice that the ballots were mailed today. So you will not be able to change your mailing address any longer, although we will take those updates for our system. You will need to use the call-in to membership to get a code to be able to do your voting. And we will make sure that information is on the website. It's also on the PowerPoint, but we'll make sure it's on the website on how to do that. Membership is working remotely because of the COVID-19 virus, but they will be checking that voicemail box numerous times a day. So you will get a call back with a code. That will happen rather quickly. So please try not to worry about getting a code. And finally, make sure that your vote, when you do make it, is well thought out and thorough, because you may not change your vote any longer. Once your vote has been submitted, it is final. I think that's all the housekeeping issues. We'll be here every day at 12:30. Saturday will be another presentation day. The presentation is online, so it's on our website and it's on our Horizon AFA Facebook page, so you can watch the presentation again if you would like. I will be time stamping where Dan and Joe speak, so information will be on our website as well. We'll get that information out so you can hear that information again. Kirk, you had your hand up. Do you have something you wanted to say? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, okay. I just want to say if anyone wants to talk to me individually about any concerns or questions they have, from my perspective, I'm happy to take any calls anytime that I'm awake. So feel free to encourage anyone to call if they can't make the 12:30 each day. I'm happy to help wherever I can to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kirk. Thank you very much. All right, we'll give just a second to see if there's any last minute question that came in. I'm scrolling through. It doesn't look like there's any hands up. You guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join the Q&A. Please feel free to join as many of them as you like. There aren't too many questions. So just if you want to join in every day and ask questions every day as they come up, please do that. That's what we're here for. And we want to make sure that you have as much information as possible going into this vote. So don't feel like you're just repetitively asking questions and taking up time. If you have them, jump in with us, ask the questions. All right, everyone, thank you.
Thanks, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye.